Carbon dioxide is continuously produced by our metabolically active tissues, and it must be transported through the blood back to the lungs so that it can be eliminated from the body. Let's begin by looking at the partial pressure gradients that drive this process. At the tissue level, metabolism produces carbon dioxide, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is relatively high in the tissues. The blood entering the systemic capillaries has a lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide. This creates a partial pressure gradient that causes carbon dioxide to diffuse from the tissues to the blood. When the blood eventually reaches the pulmonary capillaries, the situation is reversed. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the incoming venous blood is higher than the partial pressure in the alveoli. Carbon dioxide therefore diffuses from the pulmonary capillary into the alveoli, where it can be eliminated through ventilation. So we have carbon dioxide produced in the tissues entering the blood. Once carbon dioxide enters the blood, it can be transported in three primary forms. A relatively small amount, roughly 10%, is transported simply as diffused carbon dioxide in the blood. Another portion, roughly 20%, binds to proteins, particularly hemoglobin, within the erythrocyte. When carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin, we call this carbaminohemoglobin. An important distinction is that carbon dioxide does not bind to the iron-containing heme sites where oxygen binds. It binds to a different portion of the hemoglobin molecule. The majority of carbon dioxide, roughly 70%, is transported in the form of bicarbonate. Let's look at how that occurs. Carbon dioxide diffuses into the red blood cell, where we find an important enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase rapidly catalyzes the reaction between carbon dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then rapidly dissociates into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. The hydrogen ions produced by this reaction are buffered by hemoglobin inside the red blood cell. Meanwhile, as bicarbonate accumulates within the erythrocyte, bicarbonate moves out of the cell into the plasma. Because bicarbonate carries a negative charge, its movement out of the erythrocyte must be balanced electrically. As bicarbonate ion moves out of the red blood cell, a negatively charged chloride ion moves into the cell. The exchange of bicarbonate and chloride is known as the chloride shift. The important result is that much of the carbon dioxide produced by our tissues can now be transported through the blood in the form of bicarbonate. When blood reaches the pulmonary capillaries surrounding the alveoli, these processes essentially run in reverse. Because the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lower in the alveoli than the pulmonary capillary blood, dissolved carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveoli. As oxygen binds to hemoglobin in the lungs, hemoglobin becomes less able to carry carbon dioxide. This promotes the unloading of carbon dioxide from the blood and is referred to as the Haldane effect. You'll explore this mechanism in detail in biochemistry. The important concept is that oxygen loading in the lungs helps facilitate carbon dioxide unloading. Bicarbonate also moves from the plasma back into the red blood cell, while chloride moves back out. Inside the erythrocyte, bicarbonate combines with hydrogen ions that have been released by hemoglobin. Carbonic anhydrase facilitates the reverse reaction, ultimately converting these substances back into carbon dioxide and water. The newly formed carbon dioxide then diffuses out of the blood into the alveoli. So there are three major forms in which carbon dioxide is transported through the blood. A small amount is physically dissolved, some is carried bound to hemoglobin and other proteins, but the majority is transported as bicarbonate, a process that depends heavily on carbonic anhydrase within the erythrocytes and the chloride shift across the erythrocyte membrane. And the partial pressure gradient allows the carbon dioxide to diffuse into the alveoli and ultimately be eliminated by ventilation. The blood leaving the lungs now has a low PaCO2 of approximately 40 and is now available to return to the tissues to pick up additional CO2. Let's finish by looking how quickly carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange occurs as the blood travels through the pulmonary capillaries. On the left, we're looking at a partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Mixed venous blood returning to the lungs has a PaCO2 of approximately 46. The term mixed venous blood refers to the venous blood returning to the right side of the heart after blood from different tissues of the body has mixed together. Because different tissues extract different amounts of oxygen and produce different amounts of carbon dioxide, the mixed venous blood represents the average gas content of blood returning from the systemic circulation. As blood enters the pulmonary capillaries, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveoli because the alveolar PCO2 is lower. As a result, the PCO2 of the blood falls until it approaches the alveolar value of about 40 millimeters of mercury. Remember that this movement of carbon dioxide across the alveolar capillary membrane occurs by simple diffusion, driven by the partial pressure gradient. We say the same principle with oxygen, but in the opposite direction. Mixed venous blood enters the pulmonary capillary with a PO2 of approximately 40 millimeters of mercury. Because the PO2 in the alveoli is much higher, oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood. As oxygen enters the blood PO2 rises until it approaches the alveolar PO2, which is around 100 millimeters of mercury. An important point from this graph is how rapidly this equilibrium normally occurs. Under normal resting conditions, oxygen reaches near equilibrium with the alveolar gas within roughly the first third of the pulmonary capillary. This leaves much of the remaining capillary length available as a physiologic reserve. You can think of this as a built-in safety net. If gas exchange becomes somewhat less efficient, there's normally additional time and capillary length available for oxygen to continue diffusing into the blood. This reserve becomes important when diffusion is impaired, or more commonly when blood moves more rapidly through the pulmonary circulation, such as during exercise.